Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me all right. My name is Chris Pieper. I'm the undergraduate program director here in sociology, and it's a beautiful day, a beautiful spring day in Waco. I wish you could be here to see it with us, but there you are out there in the virtual land, and hope you are doing well wherever you are. I'm going to talk today about what it's like to be a sociology major at Baylor. And with me to say even more detailed information about that, if you like, is Christy Hoffman, who is a soon-to-be graduating senior in our department. And with that, I think we'll kick it off. A lot of people have basically no information about what sociology is because it's not commonly taught in high schools. But frankly, if it involves collective human activity, it is sociology. And so we call ourselves the science of human behavior in a collective setting. And that is basically kind of all you need to know about what we are as a discipline. Now, the kinds of things that we get into are things familiar to all of us. What is the nature of human relationships? How are they formed? When they are formed into larger groups such as families, how do they operate? Because they're going to operate differently from that. And then scaling up to a more macro setting, cities themselves, nations, and cultures. So basically, we are the macro or the group level social science that's kind of between psychology and anthropology. We tend to be fairly quantitative in how we approach our subject matter, although there is very much a qualitative component that we'll talk about soon in a minute. Here are some of the questions that we typically ask in our field. Poverty, obviously a very big concern for Baylor students and Baylor faculty because of the moral and obviously the economic impact of poverty. Where does it come from? How we might ameliorate it? What causes people to leave or join a religion? Very important question, especially now when more people are leaving than joining. Something that I study in detail is the effect of social media in general, but especially on mental health and relationships and relational quality. Another important thing is, like right now, we're going through a kind of war situation with Ukraine and Russia. That is really in the field of what we call political sociology, which relates to war, social movements, and revolutions, and very important for a lot of global reasons. What is the relationship between increased class position and your own happiness or joy? Tons of research on this, and spoiler alert, almost zero. More on that if you come to our major. Now then, on the issue of political ideology, something obviously very important in our political lives, what is it that makes a person tend to be more progressive or more conservative? That's called political sociology, or sometimes ideological sociology. How do we handle the pandemic? Which societies are best equipped to do that, and why? Does it relate to their economic structure, their culture, human nature? What are the possible answers to that? And so that's why we have the research that we have to answer these important questions. Our major itself contains 5 required courses that we'll talk about in a moment, and then 6 at least elective courses that are chosen. So this is our new approach that relates to the new core curriculum. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can take and how you can specialize it to your interests. It results in 124 hours for graduation, generally at the university, but only 34 hours within the major. It's pretty standard for this kind of major at the university. Courses that we offer, this is where it gets fun. Religion and society is a popular one. Here at Baylor, obviously for our kind of Christian background that we have, the study of race and ethnicity, very important, especially in the last few years. What is the sociology of the marriage and the family? Very important topic because most people end up in some kind of long-term relationship that produces children or adoptive kids. Social movements, which I teach, really cool. Basically how to overturn the government if you have to. Population health, which is kind of our epidemiological approach to health, looking at how illnesses move through a population, and then doing global perspectives and comparisons on that. Wonderful class in criminology taught by our department chair, Dr. Carson Mencken. Really important class here too on gender and sexuality, which is done very well by a number of faculty. I also teach the social psychology class. Some other classes that we're considering being considered by the dean. Really anything that you're interested in can be looked at sociologically. And so we offer independent studies that can kind of cater to your interests. But if it relates to human beings in any shape or fashion, we can make it sociological. In fact, right now I'm supervising an undergraduate thesis on the sociology of humans and animals. And she's producing actually an animated documentary as the last project for that. And it's been tremendous to learn about it. Here's one of the major reasons people join our major. We have this beautiful concentration in health that's kind of headed up by a couple new faculty, Dr. Laura Yupanex, who published 34 articles in the last year alone, and Dr. Sam Kai joined us just recently from Brown University. We have 4 total faculty in the Sociology of Health track, and this is a really useful concentration for people that want to go into health careers, but may not want to spend a whole lot of time in the sciences per se, want to have a more holistic approach to studying medicine and becoming a healthcare professional in some form or fashion. So here are courses in this area. Aging and mental health is also cross-listed with social work. Health inequalities, getting into why some have more than others with respect to health resources. Kind of an introductory class called Sociology of Medicine. And I just want to emphasize that this is probably about 25% of all of our majors end up with this health concentration because it's so useful for nursing, for pre-PA, for obviously going on to be a physician, and then working in healthcare itself at the administrative level. Very, very helpful for that. Many of our students end up in research opportunities with the faculty. I'm supervising 4 right now. A number of other faculty friends of mine are supervising maybe 3 or 4 each. And this allows the students to produce a tailored research project to their interests. And sometimes it results in publication in peer-reviewed journals in our field. We may take you to a conference, big conference coming up in a few weeks that some students are presenting at. And I want to emphasize how small majors can be advantageous. We have about 130 at any given time and about 95 minors. And what this allows us to do is really focus on you as a person. You get to know us. We get to know you in very deep detail, often for 4 years. And no one slips through the cracks. It's not going to be one of those overwhelming 500, 800 person majors where no one knows you. You can never get with a faculty member. And certainly the chances of mentorship are almost zero. That's not going to be what we're offering. So this allows us to really know you. And when it's time for a letter of recommendation or some kind of personalized statement about you, we really can do that in a very convincing way. Isolation at university is a big problem around the country. It will not be a problem if you're a sociology major, because we know each one of our students and many of their important details about their lives so that they feel like they're part of a community. And Christy can speak more to that later if you want to. Where do our alumni go on to work or do things? Well, we have some data on this. So it's about equally balanced between going into kind of the academic side of the fence and then into many other kinds of things. Often these are related to education in other ways. Quite a big number go into business and the profit sector, the so-called market sector. A lot go into social outreach to obviously use their knowledge about poverty and different social problems to help people. And a big chunk go into health and healthcare related professions. So we'll dig into this data a little bit more now and look at how it breaks down. We've had a tremendous experience getting our students in placements with AmeriCorps, teaching in elementary schools and middle schools all over the country. And then some of them go on, obviously, into graduate programs themselves. We've had wonderful placements at UT Austin and other top 10 programs. Penn State, I think we've got 3 students at Penn State right now. Texas A&M, 2 at University of Nebraska at Lincoln that I know about. And that's just beginning to sort of scratch the surface of where we've placed students in the last few years. Now, in the business realm, a lot of folks, this is increasingly popular, using sociological research techniques to learn more about the markets that they're selling to, consumer and market research. So this involves doing a lot of polling, a lot of focus groups, and Christy may be doing some of this reasonably soon as well, getting to know that particular market sector that your products and services are aimed at. We have people all over the place in tech, in marketing and consumer firms in Texas and beyond. Obviously in advertising, the connection there is obvious. Several students that are using their sociological toolkit in financial analysis, such as Deloitte and other big accounting firms, and obviously in HR, which is a kind of traditional placement for a lot of our majors. We have several people working at Facebook, and I think 2 at Google right now. The community work is an obvious extension of the sociology major, and they really know how to make these agencies work. Here's just a few around Texas and around the country. So at every level, we have alumni working to help people where they live, whether it be in CPS, working in an elected official's office, in a direct service agency, or doing legislative analysis. Really important work on the macro level to change the lives of everyday people. And in this category, we've got a cluster of wonderful things that people are doing that kind of don't fit other categories. Placements in law school at UT, at Harvard, SMU, Baylor Law, I could go on, and then many, many in med school, and this is just a partial list. University of Texas system around the state, all their different branches, BCM. And really, I always say sociology is the perfect undergraduate major because it blends together so many previous ones, other ones that we could look at with a very specific kind of usable data set, skill set that involves data analysis, research skills, and also the ability to write in a very convincing way. This data just came out a few weeks ago on how our majors do right after graduation. We're looking at 6 months after graduation, almost 90% of our majors had found either a job or had been accepted to grad school. Now that puts us, if you'll look down here, as a small major in the ranks of much bigger majors like medical humanities, and much bigger than even journalism, about the same as journalism, but they're much larger than we are. And then a higher placement rate than psychology, which is a very popular major, communications, political science, and so on. So we feel really good about the work that we're doing for undergrads in sociology at Baylor. And this has been trending up in a positive way over the last few years. We expect that it will even get better very soon. This is just within the College of Arts and Sciences, by the way. So other majors that you may be thinking about may not be included because they would be in a different college. Lots of famous and important people have majored in sociology that maybe you didn't know about. The most important American prophet that ever lived, Dr. King, majored in sociology and went on obviously to get his seminary degree and went on to change the world forever. This beautiful soul, probably the best stand-up comic of all time, really a sociology-minded guy, Robin Williams. I miss him every day. And you can tell that a lot of his major leaked into his approach to comedy. Maybe you've heard of this one. Michelle Obama, a role model to many. And now people refer to her as, refer to her husband as Michelle's husband. And I think that's probably appropriate. And of course, across the political divide, the great Ronald Reagan majored in sociology as well. So maybe you've heard of Angela Gorman, who gave a wonderful poetic address during the inauguration of Joe Biden just a couple of years ago. She majored in sociology as well. So there's lots of things you can do with this beautiful degree and lots of ways you can impact the world. We're going to now open it up to questions either to me or to Christy. Here's my contact information, which we can display now and just see what's on your mind.
All right, it looks like we do have a couple of questions here. So the first is going to be, can a student minor in sociology?
Most definitely. You can minor. We have about almost 100 minors right now, which is about 18 or 20 hours. So it's very achievable within your current major. And there's also something called a secondary major, which is like a double major, but not quite as many hours. And so typically as an advisor, I will encourage people to take the secondary major because it usually can be done and it's much higher market value in return than the minor. Even though I was a minor myself in undergrad, I will tell you that.
Awesome. All right, we have another question here that says, I've been on the fence between majoring in psychology or sociology. I've always been extremely interested in the human mind, the way I think and the way others think. Do you have any advice for someone like me who is also trying to get into law school?
Well, this might be a good one for Christy to address. I know she has a lot of experience with people in law school. But one thing I can say about the difference between psych and sociology is you might think a little bit about your motivations for these different majors. If you're really interested in the mind, then I would say probably like an individual mind, I would say definitely psychology would be for you. What we do know, though, is that so much of what happens in a person's mind is determined or at least influenced by their group setting and what goes on around them. And so the two really sit well together, and you might consider a secondary major. We have several students that do that every term because probably not all of your questions are going to be answered by one major. And I'll stop there and see if Christy has anything to add with respect to law school.
Hi guys. So yeah, sociology is actually one of the most common majors that you will have going into law school besides the obvious of political science. Big reason is that it sets you up to know the dynamics of people. Psychology is really good, to be honest. It lets you know the individual person, but sociology allows you to understand the wider dynamic of how people interact. And that's important not only as a defendant or prosecutor, but even if you're trying to understand the opinions that people may have in the jury or the wider view of how people may perceive your client. So it's really good to kind of have a all-encompassing knowledge of what goes on in the world of law.
Wonderful answer, Christy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your perspective as a student, especially. It looks like we also have a question that says, what are some specific secondary majors that the sociology program has to offer? So yeah, maybe some common secondary majors that you see sociology majors having?
I think the question is getting at maybe concentrations that we offer. The major is just a sociology major, but the big concentration we have is the sociology of health, which I mentioned before is quite popular and very useful for any kind of health-oriented career you may be interested in. Now, if the question is oriented around what secondary majors do we often link up with as a secondary major, then I would say yes, political science, psychology, sometimes journalism or communications. We find that there are a few folks that are also secondary majors with actual medical fields, for example, biology, chemistry, and things in more of the natural sciences. And so we do have a fair amount of that as well.
Dr. Pieper, do you want to talk about the concentrations, the ones that you can have in graduate school that sociology can lead to?
Sure. If you're interested in graduate school, gosh, I mean, we have so many people that are going, well, definitely into law school, into med school. We have a variety, of course, that are going into economics, political science, going on to elected kind of orientations, public affairs, things like that. So I think of it as a really strong foundational major upon which you can put almost anything. I've never seen anyone rejected from grad school, in my experience, because of a sociology major. But I've seen a lot rejected because of, say, a business major or a psychology major, just because it's not a specific skill set that you get with our major, for example. So really, you can't go wrong. I would say you're gonna be encountering a lot of faculty that will help guide you through that process if you want to go to grad school. And this is the most important thing: grad school is not usually additional money, but that's a separate conversation we'll have in 4 years.
Looks like there's a question on our end, at least from Alexandria. She asks, would sociology be a good major to take if interested in counseling and therapy?
Yeah, we do have a number of students that take sociology as a major and they're interested in becoming a therapist. I've got 2 or 3 of those now. And I would say it's solid, but you'll probably need to expand your skill set into that clinical setting, usually with a social work degree focused on the clinical setting or some kind of psychology graduate degree, probably 2 years maximum with some kind of placement, and you'll be in great shape.
Something I would want to, excuse me, add on to that is that sociology is really a good major, as Dr. Piper's been saying. It's a good foundation for anything. But an important thing that you'll learn throughout the major, as I did, is how you can kind of spin it to apply to anything you want. I was not sociology when I started college. I did not think anything of it, had no clue what it was. Had to take an intro course, actually, and I was so glad I did. It made me switch afterwards into sociology, and I've never looked back. But when I was applying to graduate school, as we said in jobs, it's like, nobody, or the majority of people and employers don't really know what sociology is if you want to look outside the world of academia. And the best thing about it is that you can either spin it however you want, or better so, you can tailor it to explain, well, I took these courses in undergraduate that are more geared towards this job, or I took these courses that have led me to become interested in this field of research, if you do want to go the academia route. So really it is a good basis for anything. It's just how you choose to take classes, which way you choose to tailor it.
Awesome. It looks like we have one more question that says, how is sociology a fit for those wanting to go into education?
I love this question because we have so many majors that end up in the classroom in some form. And I think definitely I would recommend it. And I would ask you also to specialize, take some courses in education as part of the core curriculum flexibility that we have. And those can be taught in the education department or maybe even the higher education department, depending on what you want to do. We used to offer a course called Sociology of Education. That faculty member has retired. So that would be something for maybe an independent study that we could focus on, specifically looking at how to tailor your major to fit a classroom environment. I actually believe that this is a better major for those wanting to go into teaching than an actual education major. And there's lots of reasons for that, which we can talk about in a separate context if you like. But the bottom line is your educational background will be much more widespread and diverse in a sociology major.
If we have time, Lily, there's one last thing I want to touch on based off of what Dr. Piper was saying. He mentioned earlier that Baylor offers the opportunity to do independent studies with professors and faculty. I would absolutely recommend that, encourage that going on because as Dr. Piper's been talking about with the different paths you can take, it really allows you to explore those. I did an independent study myself a couple of years ago, and it helped me to realize, one, I didn't want to do a certain path that I was interested in the academia world. Nothing against it, it was just my preferences. I preferred the actual hands-on approach of it. And the cool thing about independent studies is you get to do both. So I got to do all of the background research, and then I created a survey, distributed it to a few hundred Baylor students, and then you get to run analyses on it, something you'll learn through social statistics and research and social methods courses that you'll take here. And that really helped me decide that I actually, instead of wanting to go to grad school as I'd been planning, I wanted to go look for a job. And either way, I got accepted into graduate programs, but I was also accepted into my job. So I think independent studies would be a really, really good thing to take advantage of if you can fit it into your schedule.
That is great advice. Thank you, Chrissy, for sharing that. Well, we are out of time today, but thank you so much for joining us. And that was Such great information about the sociology department. If you guys do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great rest of your premiere day, and thanks again for joining us.